Welcome, everybody, to episode 41 of Unhacked, where we empower busy and overwhelmed business owners to outsmart Russian hackers. You guys, we talk about it all the time, the basics, the best practices. This is where it starts. But here's a sad truth. 97% of the breaches that we read about in the news were preventable. Basic security measures is what it takes. Once you get hit, you never truly can get unhacked. So that's what we're here for. We are going to... Well, today we're going to kind of demonstrate the fact that you can't get unhacked because we've got a special guest I can't wait to introduce. Before I bring him up, we'll bring up the regulars. I'm Justin Shelley, CEO of Phoenix IT Advisors, and I work with businesses in Texas, Nevada, and Utah, helping them to prevent financial loss from cybercrime, government fines, and, class action lawsuits. We've got an attorney today, so I'll have to be careful about that one. But that's the new trend, right? We're getting sued. On top of getting breached, we're getting sued after that. And maybe, Jonathan, you'll share some wisdom there as well. Anyways, that's what I do. Bryan is not here today. He's AWOL. Hopefully he'll be with us next week. But Mario, our regular, as always, here with that smiling face. Mario, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
What's up, guys? Mario Zaki, CEO of Mastech IT. We service small to medium-sized businesses in the New Jersey and New York area. We've been in business for almost 21 years now, and we try, same as like what Justin said, we try to keep small businesses protected, and we specialize in having CEOs sleep better at night.
I love that. We need it. We need that sleep. I don't get a lot of it. Anyways, all right, that's me. That's Mario. And now, guys, thrilled to introduce Jonathan Steele. So this one kind of threw me a little bit. Family law attorney specializing in high stakes divorces. And Jonathan, while I'm doing this introduction, do you have any examples, like whether it probably can't name names, but types of people that you represent in high stakes divorces? What are we talking about?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on your show. When I say high stakes, I'm referring to usually either big dollar amounts or custody disputes of children. There's no stakes higher than the kids, but some of the dollar amounts that we come across are objectively large.
Okay. So we're talking like famous people? Are we talking about rock stars, movie stars, athletes? Is that what kind of the caliber of people you're working with?
Yes to all of those.
Jesus. Okay. Did you by chance represent Jeff Bezos? Bezos, how do you say?
I did not.
Oh, talk about a high stakes divorce, right? Ouch. Anyways, shouldn't name names on here. So not only, you're dealing with high stakes cases, you've been recognized by the Illinois Super Lawyers magazine. Is that's the right title of it, right? As a rising star. Only the top 2.5 or less than 2.5% get that recognition. An emerging lawyer designated by the leading lawyers magazine, less than 2% make that one. I mean, it sounds like you probably know your stuff, right? Very, very well versed in the world of law. And then I come across this one, CompTIA Security Plus. And I wish I had the record scratch sound I could put on here. But Jonathan, tell me why a family law attorney is studying CompTIA Security Plus. And real quick, before you answer that, Mario, have you ever taken that test or done that course of study?
Many moons ago that I took it. It wasn't, the most thrilling thing I've done in my life.
It's not fun. It's not exciting. And listen, this is kind of a, I don't want to say basic or entry level, but it is one of the first places you start for security certifications. Yeah. It's not anything like a CISSP, but I got about 3/4 of the way through the book before my brain caught on fire. Not a fan. I do still have to study this stuff, but that's tough. So Jonathan, tell me why you went from family law to security or included it or whatever, and tell me how in the hell you got through that course of study, please.
Okay. There's the multi-part question there.
Yes.
I've always been interested in security, privacy in general. And then COVID hits and courts shut down and everybody sort of left to figure out how do we move forward with court. And like everything in the law, it took a little bit for the court system to adapt and to get on Zoom and to do that efficiently. And so lawyers were twiddling their thumbs. They were learning to bake bread. They were watching Tiger King and reading books and things like that. My rabbit hole was different. It was pretty security focused, pretty privacy focused, and CompTIA or TIA, if that's right.
No, I probably say it wrong.
I would guess you're right. It seemed like low hanging fruit in the sense that it is one of those sort of entry level certifications that lends some credibility to, something about something to get certified by them. And there is some intersection that I've come across, or if there wasn't, I've forged that intersection forcefully. But there is some, I think, overlap with family law because we do a lot of restraining orders, and so there's like spouses tracking spouses and using each other's devices in ways they shouldn't be. So just sort of knowing how to navigate that has proven to be beneficial in my law practice as well.
Okay.
Now, if
Fair
I can
enough.
interrupt for a second, just for our listeners that don't know the CompTIA, this is a company that has sent out or has set up like a study for basic IT. But when we say basic, it doesn't mean that it's like how do you plug in a computer. It's the foundation of getting started in the IT support field. So it is a very involved certification and study, but it's usually the one that builds up from there.
And not for the faint of heart. So, Jonathan, tell me your experience going through that. Did you find it to be harder than you expected? Was it this is your natural habitat? You blew through it, passed the test with flying colors. How was that for you taking that test?
Probably unique.
Okay.
My experience with the bar is similar, but in terms of this exam, I bought the materials as like a pack with the exam entrance fee. And like you, I started bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I started reading, and it's dense reading material. Yes. So then I said, okay, I don't have time right now to read 1,200-page PDF. Let me skip to the quiz and see, do I do well enough? And so I took the first like 20 or 30 questions, checked them, got most of them right, and said, I'm probably good. And later realized that those first 20 or 30 questions are all on the first chapter. So I didn't really give myself a good sample of what the full exam was going to be like. And I walked into it, of course, not knowing what I had gotten myself into. They took it very seriously. It's like, you can't bring anything into the exam. They made me roll up my sleeves to show I didn't have notes. That was sort of the point where I realized, wow, what did I get myself into? And I guess it's because it's sort of like an entry level to Department of Defense too. So they want to make sure that everybody's, doing the right thing. And the very first question that I sat down to answer, I almost left the exam. How sometimes there's a control question where it's not actually part of the scoring and it's like they're using you as a guinea pig. My guess is this was one of those. It was a very confusing or complex simulation, and it wasn't like a multiple choice question. It was here's a network. One of the computers is infected with a virus. Peruse the logs, trace down the source of the infection and which machines have been infected, and just using a ton of terminology made me think, okay, I got myself in over my head. I wasted money on this exam. I might as well leave, but I passed. So
really,
yeah.
Without reading the course material.
I read some of it.
Okay. Well, right. Legal terms here. No, listen, I'm impressed. I'm just going to say I'm impressed. I did not try to take the test. And I will say, and the reason I'm spending so much time on this is because I've been through the other CompTIA beginners courses, and I'm putting that in quotes, because like the Network Plus, what's the first one, Mario?
A plus.
Yeah. A plus, Network Plus. Those I consider to be pretty basic. So I grabbed the Security Plus one, thought, no problem, this will be a breeze. Not so much. Anyways, I find I do my studying in other ways. But that was, like I said, I saw that about you. That's definitely what caught my attention, why I wanted you on here. And I'd like to ask, do you do two things? Are you an attorney practicing and also do cybersecurity consulting, or have you transitioned from one to the other?
I do both.
Okay, simultaneously. And I'm going to go ahead and just plug your other company real quick. I pulled this straight off of your website or somewhere. At Steele Fortress, Jonathan leverages his unique blend of legal and cybersecurity expertise to provide comprehensive cybersecurity and privacy consulting services. This is like you couldn't write a better fit for what we want to talk about here, so I love it. His deep understanding of both the legal and technical aspects of cybersecurity and privacy make him a valuable asset to any organization looking to bolster their security posture and navigate the complex landscape of cybersecurity laws and regulations. Now, the reason this caught my attention, Jonathan, is because I got into the business that I'm in because I like to plug modems into motherboards on my Apple IIe, my dad's Apple IIe back in the day, and that evolved into a love of technology and tech. Then one day on a fateful Friday afternoon, I got a call from a client, and I'm fast forwarding to after I'd started my business, computer repair, and I was facing a full-blown ransomware attack that I thought I was adequately prepared for, and I did learn that I had a lot to learn. So I didn't go into this on purpose, but here we are. It is now what I do all day, every day, which is study and protect against cybersecurity. But not only did I accidentally evolve from technology to fighting Russian crime rings, but now I'm into I'm obviously not an attorney, but we have to fight against lawsuits. That's the next evolution of this. So perfect fit is what I'm saying. I love your background and can't wait to talk more about it. So with that, guys, we're going to kind of jump into what I really wanted to talk about is because we like to quantify the damage done in an attack. Always there is financial loss. No matter what. I'm not going to get into, there's like 100 different ways we can lose money financially. What we don't always talk about, though, is the emotional impact or the reputation impact. So, Jonathan, you have a competitor, and I just want to punt this to you and let you do what you will with it. But tell me a little bit about this other firm that was breached and, maybe what they could have done to prevent it if you want to talk about that, or at a minimum, what was like the impact to this organization post-breach?
Yeah, so there's give or take 3 big family law firms in the city of Chicago. We're one of them. And we tend to spar against each other just in terms of clientele. We attract the same kinds of cases. And one of those competitors a number of years ago was the victim of, I believe it was ransomware. And so they were shut down for, it was a short time, but when you've got 50, 60 lawyers that bill by the hour, a short time becomes an expensive time.
Yeah.
And also, to your point, the reputational impact far exceeds whatever they ended up paying to get their files back. Because, again, if you are one of 3 large family law firms that's attracting politicians and celebrities and, athletes and things like that, and your firm has just been in the news for leaking all of their data, you're probably going to go to one of the other 3. Because as divorce lawyers, we have every kind of data about clients that you could imagine. We have their kids' medical records, we have their medical records, we have their tax returns, their bank statements, their wills, you name it. If there's something that classified as PII, we have all of it. So if we're leaking data as a family law firm, those effects are devastating to the people whose data we've leaked. And so from a reputational perspective, it's a tough one to bounce back from.
Yeah, you're dealing with people that by nature are trying to stay under the radar as much as possible. So when something like this is leaked, it's far from being under the radar. Now you're a center of attention. Now, this athlete or so-and-so is now, everybody knows not only are they getting a divorce, but, what other things that they probably were trying to hide. So that it's a very bad situation to be in.
You're absolutely right. A lot of the reason people come to us is because we exercise discretion. We know we're representing public figures, and so we keep as little personally identifiable information in the public record as possible. Normally, if we're a lot of run-of-the-mill divorces, you'll just enter your judgment for divorce, and it's public record, and anybody can go online and read it. We will normally do like a one-page judgment that goes in the public record when the longer agreement is sort of incorporated by reference and it's not in the public record. And that's just something we do to keep, parenting schedules out of the record, to keep how an estate is divided out of the record, what people earn. And so if we go to all that effort to keep their information private and then just leak everything, their tax returns, their social security numbers and everything, we've undone all the effort we put into keeping them private.
That's
Do
it's
you
like
happen to
going.
have? No, go ahead, Mario.
It's just like it seems like when you go to somebody and say, hey, can you keep a secret, and they just turn around and tell the whole world, like like that's exactly what's happening there.
I think it's, to their defense, maybe it's more like writing down the secret and then just leaving it in the village square or something. I didn't
Yeah.
tell everybody. I just wrote it down and made it available to everybody.
Exactly.
Do you happen to know any numbers of as far as financial impact of that particular breach?
I don't know the exact numbers. I can do rough math and say that firm has 40 lawyers that are probably averaging $400 or $500 an hour. So every hour is a large amount of money that they're losing. And I think they were offline almost entirely for over a week because they had no access to their client files. I do think they ended up paying the ransom, and that's how they got their files back. But being offline for a week, it may sound like a small amount of time, but when you have hundreds and hundreds of clients with active cases and you're in and out of court and you're getting motions from firms that aren't offline, you're at a distinct disadvantage before you even start to calculate that sort of reputational impact.
Right. So, okay,
we're talking about
this is
millions of dollars just in a week.
Yeah.
Millions just per week.
In the initial, right, and not counting, like we're talking about the ongoing reputational damage, lost cases moving forward. This is a burning question I've got to ask because it's something that I'm seeing more and more. I'm talking about more and more is the lawsuits that come on the heels of an attack like this. Showing my ignorance, do law firms get sued in cases like this? Do you have any idea if they were sued for that breach?
I think it depends on how the breach happened. If you were employing sort of best practices and all your data was encrypted and you did everything you were supposed to do, is there a lawyer out there that will find a way to sue you anyway? Yeah. There are some unscrupulous lawyers that, you dangle a couple dollars in front of them and they're going to come running whether there's a valid claim or not. But if they were doing something negligent, if they, were storing all of this stuff unencrypted, or if they left open like an SSH port on their firewall, or, just did something imprudent, I'll say that, then you're definitely giving rise to litigation because you were negligent, you were not employing the best practices. So I don't know whether this particular law firm ended up on the receiving end of a lawsuit.
Okay.
And I think it would hinge on how it happened.
Do you, and here's just a thought or a question, do you see yourself moving into defending in cases like this with your background in both cybersecurity and law? It seems like that'd be a great fit.
I could see myself more so being on the prosecuting side of that than the defending side. There are certain things that are accepted as quote unquote best practices in what we do specifically. And I would challenge that. I would challenge whether or not using Outlook, using Gmail is best practices, because those emails are encrypted in transit and they're encrypted on Outlook's server. But that means it's private between you, your client, and Microsoft. So if we have an ethical obligation to protect privilege, I would say you're not doing the right thing if you're not using an end-to-end encrypted email provider. And that's just one example. And I think, emails and attachments to emails that are sent during the course of litigation are very often not intercepted in the sense that somebody hops in the middle and takes the data, but very often one spouse has the other spouse's credentials, and so they sign into their email, and then all of a sudden it's just a treasure trove of information because it's all the attachments from the lawyers. So I'd push people towards end-to-end encryption for email, but also file sharing as opposed to attachments to emails. I would say that's not best practices. So I would like to, at some point in my life, be on the prosecuting end of that, because I do think it would sort of incentivize law firms to step it up in terms of what is a best practice.
Right.
I do
Yeah.
have one question. That other firm, are they still one of the top three? Are they still in business?
Yeah. Yes to both.
Okay. All right.
As far as the email encryption goes, it kind of reminds me of the misconception people have about moving to the cloud. They don't need to worry about security because all of their stuff's in the cloud. It's somebody else's problem. And what I like to remind people is that if you can get to your data, a bad guy can get to your data. All they have to do is access your computer. And if you're not protecting your computer, you're opening up yourself, your clients, your patients, your customers, whatever you call them, and all of their information. So, we are stewards of this stuff, and it is something that we need to take very seriously. To your point about best practices, I think in a lot of cases, I'm kind of curious about your take on this, that I think published frameworks are really the best answer in that case. We've got a lot of them to choose from, and some of them are forced on us through regulation, but also we just have like CIS, for example, which is kind of an agreed upon best practices in the industry. What are your thoughts on that, using these frameworks and proving that you've been at least making progress towards compliance on them? Would that be a best practice in your mind, as far as when somebody's sued or litigate? I don't know the right words for this.
I think it's better than nothing. And I think saying that you're employing best practices, even if I may not view it as a best practice, if you are following what is accepted generally, is going to be a valid defense. So I think if you're following an established framework, great.
Okay.
My concern is similar to a legal concern, is that some of those best practices, some of those frameworks, some of the regulation that you made reference to is just very slow to adapt. It's resistant to change by its very nature, and stuff is changing. Attack vectors are changing. The threat landscape is changing constantly. And so it's a cat and mouse game. And, if you are following what was best practices yesterday, you may be in trouble today.
Fair. That's a good point. All right, let's move on to security. So we do a cybersecurity tip on here, and I mean, listen, I got divorced 2 years ago, so this is intriguing to me. It's over, it's done. Luckily it was amicable. There wasn't a lot of, we did it ourselves. We didn't have attorneys involved. There wasn't custody battles or anything like that. But as business owners, everything we have is already at risk. And where a divorce comes into play, and my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, if I own a business and I get divorced, that business is a marital asset, which could be divided in half, right? That's question number one.
The answer is sort of, it depends.
Okay.
You're always going to get that kind of answer out of a lawyer, as opposed to,
sure.
And the reason I say that is because if the business was started during the marriage, then you're going to have that marital presumption. If it was started before the marriage, you're not. But then even within those two buckets is also, where did the money come from? So you might have started it during the marriage, but you used money that you had from before. And so you could have an argument that it's still not marital, even though it was started during the marriage.
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mario.
So this is a question, and we have discussed it in the industry several times. We meet on a weekly accountability group, and this is something that comes up all the time. And I know every state is different, but in a general, rule of thumb or something, we come across a lot of times we sit down with a business owner, they're not happy with their existing IT company, either because of a breach or because of something, and they're kind of locked into, some sort of contract, or there could be not necessarily in a contract, but the existing IT company or MSP does not want to relinquish or provide them their passwords or give them access to their stuff. To me, that seems like it's almost a form of ransom, because they're holding him hostage. They're saying we're not going to give you this stuff, or you're this is to stay with us. We're not providing it. Um, from a lawyer, what do you usually say, or what do you think about that?
I come across a similar but different circumstance where sometimes a lawyer will get fired during the pendency of the case, and you come in to replace them, and they say, "We're not giving you the client file for whatever reason. Maybe the client owes money, and when they pay, then we'll give you their file." That's not a thing. That file does not belong to the lawyer. Those passwords and credentials don't belong to the MSP. Those are the company, the business's credentials. Those are their passwords. So if they get fired, maybe they have a claim for, unpaid wages at the end of their contract, or maybe you're like a cancellation termination fee. But holding your data, your credentials, your access to your data ransom, I don't think is appropriate.
Yeah, it does. It gets thrown around a lot. The question of what's ethical, what's allowed, what's legal. I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
battle almost every
unfortunately,
time.
yeah, and then unfortunately, sometimes you have to engage with somebody, like a lawyer, and sometimes it could just be a letter from a lawyer, like, listen, you are to pass this information as soon as possible. But unfortunately, they feel like, what, you're, halfway through a 3-year contract. You have to, we're not giving you anything, and we're not allowing you to go in there, and it has to be through us, and we're not doing it for you until you give us, passwords, or sorry, you give us money or whatever. To me, that's ransom. Like they're not providing you with the information that belongs to you because of money or whatever reason.
Yeah, I see them as separate. They may very well have a claim to money. They may very well have, maybe you didn't have under the contract the right to terminate your agreement early. And that's going to be contract specific, whether or not there's a penalty, whether or not there's a notice requirement, that kind of thing. But it's wholly separate and apart from you having access to your data and your passwords.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what should a business owner be concerned about? What should he she do to prepare for the? And again, I don't think most of us, don't sit around and plan to get divorced. I certainly didn't think it was coming. Um, but what would be your advice to business owners to be more prepared? If a divorce happens, what do they need to worry about?
I mean, just keeping records. Sometimes you'll see somebody lose a lot of money because they couldn't trace something to being non-marital, and had they kept better records, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Um, so, I think keeping records of, your tax filings, distributions that are coming out to your partners, keeping a separation of expenses. So a lot of times you'll see in a divorce case, somebody will tout an artificially low salary because their business is picking up all their personal expenses. The business is paying a lease for a car, paying for gas, paying for restaurants, paying for entertainment and travel. Um, and you're going to have your own issues with the IRS on some of that stuff, but you're also going to have some issues in your divorce case because a lot of that is going to be add backs in terms of what is your actual income. And, divorce judges they're not strangers to the concept of, I was making a lot of money and then the divorce came and, oh, my business isn't doing so good anymore.
Right.
You see it every day. So,
Okay. What about, and this is probably more general question because it's not just business owners that get divorced, but regarding cybersecurity and keeping our information private and protected, what do we need to do to prevent divorce from getting ugly?
I think it's the same sort of cyber hygiene before, during, after a divorce. I think just, all these best practices. I know I'm overusing that term, but anytime you like open your news feed and read what are the top 10 cybersecurity advice, they're pretty similar, right? There's
Right.
use unique passwords, use a password manager, use a VPN on public Wi-Fi, although that one's less of a concern nowadays, and things like that, and keep your devices updated. Those are going to be similar pre, during, and post divorce. Some of the divorce specific ones is more around data sharing access, like what you have given access to, knowingly, unknowingly. Maybe you gave location access to your husband 15 years ago and you're just not aware that he still has access. Or maybe you're sharing your photo album and you didn't know, or maybe you're sending photos and they have metadata. So you just have to be a little bit more vigilant about what data you're giving to who, and how long that access is in place.
Okay. All right, we're going to kind of start wrapping this up, but I wanted to sign off with just general uh, business advice to our target audience. We speak to small and mid-sized businesses, so your firm, probably that size range and down is really where we focus. So from the standpoint of cybersecurity, from the standpoint of just business best practices, what would you tell the business community? Share some of your life experiences with us.
I don't look at it as an if question. If we're going to leak data, if we're going to get hacked, if we're going to get ransomware, you got to look at it as when, and have a plan in place beforehand, because trying to clean that up afterwards, you can go to the best IT departments and professionals in the world, and they can't decrypt encrypted files that have been encrypted with any sort of real encryption. And so you're behind the eight ball right off the bat. So I think having a plan in place for, if you've leaked data, if you've been the victim of a data breach, you need to have a notification method in place, so you're telling your customers in a timely way and allowing them to do something about it. And then I think just looking at IT as an investment rather than a cost, rather than an expense. A lot of law firms are like, well, can we afford IT, or can we just pay someone on a as needed, fix my problem basis? And that can end up being more expensive. And I think it's just the wrong mindset. I think you need to look at IT as, this could help me grow my business. This could help me make my business more robust. It could make my business more secure. It can make my website more polished. And so that's the face of my company. And so could it be expensive? Maybe. It depends on, what kind of IT managed provider you're looking at, but I think it's better to look at it as an investment.
Okay. Mario, any thoughts or questions for Jonathan?
I mean, do you usually get into advice on with customers or like businesses that are looking for services, or like what if they had like an issue, where's the direction that you're usually telling them to look out for?
Most of what I've seen personally is somebody coming in and just being sure that they have spyware. I'm certain of it. Somehow my husband knows where I am. Somehow he knows what I'm doing, what I'm spending, that kind of thing. And so I could spend a lot of time helping people divorce their spouses digitally as much as I spend divorcing them physically, financially, emotionally. So that seems to be the focus for me at this time. And of course, there's sort of like a business. It carries over because a lot of my clients in law they have businesses, so they apply the same sort of knowledge and practices and procedures to their business that they're employing in their personal life.
All right, I've got one more question. I think maybe we'll make this the last one, but you said something and I hope I heard you right. So clarify if I didn't, but I want to talk about cybersecurity can help grow my business. Did you say that? Did I hear that correctly?
I'm speaking more in terms of IT in general. I think
Okay.
IT does more than cybersecurity. It encompasses more, and I think it can help to grow a business.
Okay. And I'm it caught my attention because when we're looking at your competitor, the lack of cybersecurity, and I'm making assumptions, obviously. I wasn't there. I don't know anything about their cybersecurity posture. But if we assume that that was something that they could have prevented, certainly the lack of the cybersecurity measures helped them not grow their business or help them shrink their business. And maybe a firm like yours could come in and really demonstrate your cybersecurity posture, and maybe you could grow your business. Is that, what are your thoughts on that?
I think if a good IT solution helps you grow it, the converse has got to be true. A bad IT policy or bad IT department or a lack thereof entirely has the potential to ruin your business at work, at bottom, or certainly affect your customer, what kind of clients you attract, how many. And, candidly, some of my clients are inconvenienced by some of the security measures that I use.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to have to click a link to download this attachment. I don't want to have to type in a password. I don't want to have to get a two-factor code. Why can't I just attach it to the email, please? And they can go somewhere else. I don't want to be sued because I was convinced to use something that I don't think is the right thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've said before that if cybersecurity isn't a giant pain in your ass, you're doing it wrong. I hate that statement. I don't know that I completely agree with it, but I certainly don't disagree with it. And then from, I do think that there is a business benefit because we always look at this as a cost, right? IT, cybersecurity, it's a cost. It's almost insurance, right? We're preventing loss. We're preventing a what if. But I do believe that there is a way to demonstrate a strong cybersecurity posture and use that to build trust. And we know businesses people do businesses. People do business with those they know, like, and trust, right? And so if we can use this as a way to gain trust and demonstrate trust, demonstrate that people are giving away their information to us, whether we're a law firm or a health, a hospital or a medical practice or whatever, we're stewards of this information, and where we can demonstrate and prove that we are taking it serious. I do believe that could be used as a way to grow your business, or to at least, build that trust factor. So, guys, let's go ahead and move to key takeaways and final thoughts. And, we kind of do this at the end. What if nothing else, if somebody just came and heard only this one point, what would you want them to take away from today's episode? And Mario, we're going to start with you, and then Jonathan, if you've got some thoughts, and then I'll take it home. Mario, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really, it confirms a lot of the things that we have been talking about on this podcast for a long time. It's that you have to do your due diligence, and we have it directly from a lawyer that if you're neglecting something, you're not doing some things that you're supposed to be doing, that it's going to open the door to not only an attack, but possibly kick you while you're down and get sued after the fact. So yes, it happens, and you have to do what you can to avoid it.
Right. Perfect. All right, Mario, as always, thanks for being here, sharing your thoughts. Jonathan, your turn. Key takeaway. What if somebody could only remember one thing from today's episode? What would you want that to be?
I think you can only leak what you have. And so maybe you don't want to collect information from your customers that you don't need. Maybe sit down and figure out, maybe I don't need a home address for Netflix. Maybe I don't need a cell phone number for Domino's. And so if you're just collecting more data than is necessary, you have more to spill if you are the victim of a leak or a breach. And so collect what you actually need to collect, and then encryption is your friend on what you actually do need to collect.
I love that. Those are both very, brilliant. Well, key concepts, right? This is really where it starts, and I'll be honest, it's not one we talk about a lot. I love that line. You can only leak what you have. I think sometimes we get sloppy with what we collect, but also what we archive, what we keep. And I might just add to it, purge that shit. If you don't need it, get rid of it. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. Now, I really do appreciate
Justin, I believe Jonathan was telling us he's opening up his own practice, right?
Yep. You've got, if somebody were to reach you for legal, first of all, they're going to go to steelfamlaw, STELEFAMLAW.com, correct?
Yep.
And then do you have a separate website for your security firm that you're working in now?
SteeleFortress.com. You can reach me there and get your cybersecurity and privacy consultation.
Steele Fort, and again, STEELE, fortress.com. Appreciate it. And, I've said before, I'll say it again. I learn more on these podcasts. I'm here for very selfish reasons. And I love being able to tap into your wisdom, to the other guests we've had on the show. So thank you so much again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
My key takeaway, you actually stole it because I was going to steal yours and then you stole it right back. You can only leak what you have. So I'm just going to use my generic one. Guys, best practices are your friend. Make sure that those are in place. Have a plan of action, have milestones. You show that, to prove that you're doing what you're told to do, what you're supposed to do. What are the best practices? Have them written out. Real quick, Jonathan, I like to pick on a guy I saw on Reddit, an MSP owner that had been in the business for 30 years. And a prospect asked him, what are these best practices? And he's like, I don't know. You got to know what they are if you're going to be rolling them out. So identify them, write them down, measure against them, and make constant progress. I wish Bryan was here today because he would say cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. Make small improvements every day. And that's what we like to teach people. So guys, if you have any other thoughts, questions, if you want to contact any of us, our information is available on unhacked.live. Also our links to social media and a free assessment if you'd like to go that route. Any of us. And Jonathan, I'm gonna throw you out there. Maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't, but we do free assessments to people that listen to the show and want to come just get a basic understanding of what their cybersecurity posture is. So join us at unhacked.live. And other than that, we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you.